That afternoon, the sky over Charlotte faded into amber. The sun sank slowly behind the quiet rows of two-story houses in the southern part of the city. The air was still nothing out of place, but everything began to shift. The moment red and blue lights from a patrol car lit up behind a silver-gray BMW luxury car. The car was driving within the speed limit, not swerving, not breaking any obvious laws. The driver, a black woman, her hair neatly tied up, still wearing her judicial robe from a long day in court. Her name was Clara Rowe, 47 years old, a judge on the North Carolina State Bench. She pulled over, turned off the engine, lowered the window, and placed both hands neatly on the steering wheel. A habit no one teaches, but every black person knows. Behind her, Officer Wade Miller stepped out of the patrol car, one hand resting lightly on the grip of his gun, the other holding a citation pad. He walked up, no greeting, no smile. Registration license and your reason for driving this vehicle. Clara turned to him, her voice calm. This car is mine. I can provide all the necessary documents, officer. She handed over each item, organized, accurate, clear. Not the slightest hint of panic. But Wade Miller didn't step back. He didn't nod. He didn't confirm anything had been verified. He stared at Clara like he was waiting for a confession that didn't exist. You said, you're a judge. Clara nodded, as composed as if she were in court. Yes, I left the courthouse less than 20 minutes ago. A pause, but not the pause of understanding, a pause filled with doubt. And at that moment, you could feel that something wrong was starting. Not because Clara had done anything wrong, not because her documents were in question, but simply because she was a black woman, driving a car people thought she shouldn't be driving. A silence stretched taut like a piano wire. Clara kept her voice steady, but her eyes changed, not anger, not fear, but cold. Cold like the truth the law had taught her. That being right doesn't always mean being recognized as right. That explaining clearly doesn't always lead to being believed. Wade Miller spoke slowly. I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle for further verification. Clara didn't react immediately. She looked him in the eye, the kind of look that had met many like his across her career. I've provided every legal document required. On what grounds did you pull me over? Her calmness unsettled Miller more than if she had been defiant. You see, this wasn't just a traffic stop. This was where silent bias collided with quiet strength. A moment when a judge's robe no longer offered protection to the one wearing it. And in the fading sunset, the truth began to emerge. Not with gunfire, not with shouting, but with the uneasy silence of a man who refused to step back. And you, if you were there, what would you think was really happening? Remember the name Clara Rowe, because this is the first moment in a story that no one wants to believe could happen in a country that claims to be fair. And this story is only just beginning. Before we move into the heart of the story, drop a comment below. Tell us where you're listening from and what time it is there so we know how far this story is traveling and who it's reaching. And now let's begin. Clara Rowe wasn't born in a courtroom. She was born in a small wooden house in the outskirts of Jackson, Mississippi, where dinner was often split in half to save for the next day, and every morning began with the same question. Will you make it home safe today? Clara's father, Harold Rowe, was a high school history teacher. He believed that if the child understood the past clearly, they wouldn't lose their way in the future. Her mother, Denise, was a midwife, a tough woman, hands off and bloodied from birth, but her mind steady as a lead surgeon. From her mother, Clara learned resilience. From her father, she learned justice. But the most important lesson of her life came one night in June when she was just 15. That day, her brother Marcus was arrested after school. Why? A convenience store had been robbed about half a block from where he was standing. No evidence, no witness description, just a young black man in a hoodie in the wrong place at the wrong time. Clara saw Marcus shoved into a squad car, face pressed against the hood, while the crowd around them stood in frozen silence. Her mother screamed, "He's only 17. He just came from the library." The officers didn't respond. They just slammed the car door shut, like sealing away all hope. Clara stood there. Her heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst through her chest. Not from fear, but from anger. Anger at helplessness. Anger at silence. Anger at a system that could steal an innocent person's freedom with nothing more than a suspicious glance. The case was eventually dropped thanks to security camera footage and testimonies from friends. But Marcus's name remained in the school system as a person once detained for investigation. And Clara never forgot that night. A week later, during dinner, her father asked, "What do you think about what happened to your brother?" Clara didn't answer right away. She stared at her plate, then looked up. Her voice was soft but firm. "I'm going to become someone who makes sure things like that never happen again." Harold nodded. "Then study? Study the law, but don't just study to win. Study to know when silence is a crime." From that day on, Clara buried herself in books. She never went to bed without reading at least 5 pages of the Constitution. Her friends called her the lawyer grandma. She didn't care. She wasn't studying just to pass exams. She was studying to understand what had happened to Marcus, to understand how justice could be twisted even when it's written in the most beautiful words. She got a full scholarship to Howard University, then went on to study law at the University of North Carolina and became a clerk for a well-known federal judge who would later become her mentor into the profession. Clara never shouted in a courtroom. She didn't need to. Just seeing her stand back, straight eyes, steady, voice low but clear, was enough to quiet the room. Someone once asked, "How do you stay calm when delivering verdicts in heartbreaking cases?" Clara simply smiled. "I was raised to stay calm in chaos." And she did. She didn't let emotion cloud her judgment. But she didn't let judgment numb her humanity either. Clara was the kind of judge who could sentence an abuser, but also order therapy as part of the punishment. She understood victims, and she understood offenders. But the one thing she could never forgive was abuse of power, especially by those who wore a uniform without understanding its true meaning. So when she was pulled over in Charlotte that day, when the man standing in front of her car didn't believe her, documents didn't believe her calm, and only saw a black woman, she wasn't surprised because she'd spent her whole life preparing for that moment. You see, Clara Rowe didn't become a judge for glory. She became a judge because of a promise she made at 15 to make sure what happened to her brother wouldn't happen to anyone else. And now in that quiet street in the fading light of day, she knew she was facing another test. Not a test of sentencing, but a test of proving that sometimes justice begins with how a person stays calm when everything around them is spinning out of control. Wade Miller believed in order. Not the kind of order you read in law books, but the kind he felt in his gut. The city in Wade's view only stayed peaceful if people were afraid. Afraid to slip up. Afraid to get caught. Afraid to be noticed. He didn't learn that at the police academy. He learned it from his father, a former officer in West Charlotte, who once told him, "If you let people forget who's holding the gun, you've already lost." To Wade, power was something you never let fall into someone else's hands. Not even the hands of a judge or a black woman claiming to be one. He was 38 this year with nearly 12 years on the force. On paper, his record looked clean. 3 commendations, 1 Community Contributor Award. But if you flip through the internal complaint logs, you'd find 7 misconduct allegations, most involving Black or Latinx individuals. None led to formal charges. Why? Lack of evidence. Dashboard camera malfunction. Body mic turned off at the time, unclear why. Witnesses not reliable. And just like every other time, Wade walked away. Quietly. No official warning. The system had learned to protect men like Wade. Because men like Wade got the job done. Because they made criminals afraid. Because they didn't hesitate to go hard when needed. And the cost of crossing the line, if no one filmed it, it didn't last long in memory. Wade never thought of himself as a bad guy. On the contrary, he saw himself as the last fence between the city and chaos. He believed that if he didn't control the situation, then someone else would control him. And that was something he'd never allow. That afternoon, when the silver-gray BMW passed through his line of sight, Wade felt something was off. Not because the car was breaking the law, not because of any system alert, but simply because it was too quiet. The driver, a black woman wearing a black robe, different. In Wade's mind, anyone who didn't blend in with the rest was reason enough for a stop. He hit the horn. Red and blue lights flickered across the asphalt. The car obediently pulled over. "Don't step out of this vehicle," Wade said as he approached. "I just need to verify a few things." The woman, Clara Rowe, didn't argue. She didn't flinch. She handed over her documents calmly. Wade flipped through each item. Name matched. Plate matched. Everything matched. But still something felt wrong. Maybe it was her eyes, so calm it was unsettling. Maybe her voice, completely unafraid. Or maybe it was the sense that he couldn't control the situation the way he usually did. "You say you're a judge?" he asked. "Yes," Clara replied. "North Carolina State Court." A moment of silence. Wade didn't move. His heart beat faster than usual. He didn't like being questioned, didn't like the feeling of being the one under suspicion. And in the silence between them, everything began to shift. Wade had pulled over hundreds of vehicles in his life. Most people looked down, most people apologized, most people were afraid. But Clara wasn't. She sat there like it was a courtroom and he was the one being examined. He wasn't used to this feeling, wasn't used to people not fearing him. You see, Wade Miller wasn't a monster. He was a product of a system that taught him, be aggressive, we'll cover for you, of an environment where emotion often overruled the law, of a department culture that treated power as something you never surrender. But that afternoon on a quiet road facing a woman who knew the law and refused to back down, Wade Miller stepped too close to a line he thought he'd never cross. And once you cross it, the truth is no longer yours alone. It belongs to everyone watching and everyone recording. Clara placed her documents neatly on the dashboard. Vehicle registration, driver's license, insurance, all under her name. Clear, correct, unambiguous. Wade Miller leaned in, took each one, eyes scanning quickly, then stopping. Signature, plate number, car color, all perfectly valid. But he didn't step back. He didn't say thank you. He didn't return the documents. He stood there, eyes narrowing, lips tight, like he was trying to extract a flaw the papers didn't show. This car, do you drive it often? His voice was lower now, drier. Clara tilted her head slightly, keeping her voice polite. This is my car. I drive it every day. Could be a rental. He floated the idea, not a real question, more like fishing for an excuse. No, officer. I bought this car 2 years ago. Regions Bank loan fully paid. You can verify it if you want. Miller didn't respond. He stared at her, not at the documents, not at the car, just at the person behind the wheel. A black woman, well-dressed, eyes not cast downward. That was the moment the papers no longer mattered. Not because they were incorrect, but because they didn't align with his assumptions. I've seen cases like this before. A car registered to one person but used improperly by someone else. Clara exhaled softly. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't angry. Just silent for a few seconds, then asked, are police allowed to detain someone based on a feeling? The question wasn't meant to attack. It was simply correct. So correct, it hit like a punch to anyone unprepared. Wade stepped half a pace back. He knew he had no legal reason to keep her, but his mind still clung to suspicion. Not because of faulty documents, not because of the car, but because of something deeper. Something he couldn't write down. Something he couldn't say aloud. Just a feeling. A feeling that's been used to justify countless wrongful acts. He looked dangerous. She didn't seem like she belonged in that car. I thought they were hiding something. Biased policing. Policing not guided by the law, but by instinct tainted with prejudice. And when that instinct is flawed, justice gets warped with it. Clara saw it. She'd read about it. She'd heard victims recounted in court. And now it was happening right in front of her. But she didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She had the law, and she had resolve. If you don't have a legitimate reason to detain me, I'd like to continue on my way. Wade bit his lip. His hand clenched the stack of documents. He didn't know what to do next. If he let her go, he'd feel like he lost control. If he kept her, he knew he might be crossing a line. He was caught between ego and law, between instinct and judgment. Far-off traffic still flowed quietly. The sky deepened in color. The sun dipped behind the trees, leaving a soft streak of light at the horizon. A long, still pause. Then Clara spoke. Have you ever wondered why some people's documents are trusted and others are just seen as a mask for suspicion? Wade didn't answer. He knew that if he answered truthfully, he'd have to face a part of himself he wasn't ready to confront. And that's when he realized he was no longer in control of this stop, not because of Clara, but because of the truth. The truth that when bias has already made up its mind, documents will never be enough. And Clara Rowe knew that better than anyone. She had lived it, studied it, and become a steward of justice because of moments like this. She wasn't just defending her own rights. She was defending the rights of others, those without all the papers, without the words, without the cameras, to prove their innocence. That moment, seemingly quiet, was actually a confrontation between two value systems. One side held a police badge, the other held the banner of justice. And this encounter was only the beginning. A gentle breeze swept through the quiet streets of South Charlotte. But the air around the silver BMW luxury car grew heavier, not because of the weather, but because of the stairs. Stairs locking onto a scene all too familiar. A car pulled over at the curb, a white officer towering above, and a black woman staying calm to a terrifying degree. At first, just one person, a middle-aged woman pushing a stroller across the street. She saw the officer, then the woman behind the wheel. She stopped, quietly pulled out her phone. Another person, a young man in a red hoodie, headphones around his neck, removed one earpiece when he sensed something wasn't right. He slowly pulled out his phone, turned it vertical, hit record. Then a voice rang out from across the street. Clear surprise. "Yo, that's Judge Rowe. That's Clara Rowe. I know her." The speaker was a law student. He was heading home from the library. He had once attended a seminar where Clara had been the keynote speaker. A woman who taught the Constitution with eyes that were both firm and kind. And now she was being detained on the side of the road. He stepped closer, standing just a few meters away. He didn't intervene, just recorded. The crowd started to form. 3 people, 5, 9, each one silent but holding a phone, lenses all pointed in the same direction. Wade Miller felt it immediately, the pressure without words, the kind of stare that doesn't need to yell to make you feel cornered. He tried to keep his voice steady. "Folks, please do not interfere with the police investigation." No one responded, but no one moved away either. They didn't step forward, they just stood, filming. A black woman in her 50s whispered, "Lord, not again." An older man shook his head. "Don't they know who she is?" The truth was, they did. And Miller was starting to realize he was no longer in control of this narrative. In the past, situations like this ended in silence. No video, no evidence, just the officer's word against the person they stopped. But the times had changed. George Floyd, Philando Castile, Sandra Bland, Eric Garner. They weren't just names in police reports anymore. They were symbols. And it all started with phones, with cameras that changed everything. They made prejudice visible, made violence harder to hide behind protocol. And today on a small road in Charlotte, Clara Rowe didn't just have the law on her side. She had cameras, she had witnesses, she had the truth this time documented by the second. Wade took a half step back, not out of fear, but because he knew every move he made now was evidence. He glanced at Clara, then at the crowd. His face was no longer as rigid as before. It was faltering. No one needed to shout justice. No one needed to cause a scene. The silence was the loudest statement of all. Clara lowered her window a bit more. Her voice wasn't loud, but it rang clearly. "Thank you all for being here. I don't need protection, I just need you to keep recording." Someone nodded. Someone else whispered, "She's handling it like a queen." Miller turned away, his hand trembled slightly. No one could really see it, but he could feel it himself. What he feared wasn't the woman sitting in the car. What he feared was the community's gaze. What moments ago felt like power was now starting to feel like judgment. And in that court, he didn't get to pick his role. Cameras don't save people, but they stop evil from hiding. Clara knew that, and she understood that today she wasn't just facing a police officer. She was facing a system that had hurt countless others like her. But this time, that system was under a spotlight, under dozens of eyes, dozens of phones, and a community ready to speak. The balance of power had begun to shift, not with weapons, not with resistance, but with observation. And sometimes just one tap on the record button at the right moment is enough to change the entire game. Tran stepped out of the second patrol car with soft but steady steps. The small radio on her shoulder still crackled faintly. A simple dispatch, requesting support at Wilkins and East 9th. Tense interaction, drawing attention. She had handled hundreds of these calls, but the moment she arrived, Kim felt something different. A scattered crowd stood on either side of the road, not shouting, not protesting, just recording. In the center, a silver BMW parked neatly at the curb, and in front of it, her colleague, Officer Wade Miller, stood upright, but his eyes looked shaken. Kim didn't storm in like an action movie. She didn't yell, "What's going on here?" She simply observed. And the moment her eyes met the face of the woman behind the wheel, she realized this situation needed something Wade no longer had emotional control. Clara Rowe saw Kim from a distance. She didn't know who the woman was, but the way she walked slowly kept her distance and didn't place a hand near her weapon was enough to make Clara hope just a little. Kim quietly stepped up beside Miller, lowering her voice. "Wade, I'm here. What's the situation?" Miller turned and whispered. She handed over all the paperwork. "But something feels off. I want to verify more." Kim looked him straight in the eye. The car, or just your feeling?" Miller frowned. "I have the right to request further checks if I have reasonable suspicion." Kim took a deep breath. She knew the protocol. She knew what was lawful and what wasn't. And she knew this situation was right on the edge. She glanced at the crowd, camera still recording. Every move, every word could become a headline by morning. Wade let me talk to her. Just let me try. Miller said nothing. He stepped back, not happily, but without blocking her. Kim stepped forward, maintaining standard distance. Her voice flowed like water. Ma'am, I'm Officer Kim Tran. I'm here to assist and ensure everything proceeds calmly. May I ask you a few questions? Clara nodded, eyes never leaving hers. As long as it's not a pointless repeat. Kim gave a slight smile, a small neutral smile, neither inviting nor distant. I understand you've provided your documents and committed no violations. Is that correct? Exactly. And I've made it clear who I am, why I'm here, and who this vehicle belongs to. Kim nodded, didn't write anything down, didn't press further, just listened. I'm not here to accuse anyone, only to ensure safety and fairness. Thank you for staying calm. Clara looked at Kim, her voice softening slightly for the first time. I stay calm not because I'm not angry, but because I know to some people the moment I raise my voice, I'm automatically wrong. Kim remained silent. Not because she had nothing to say, but because those words were true and needed no follow-up. Officer Kim Tran was never the standout in the department. She didn't talk much, she didn't pound her chest, but she didn't look away from wrongdoing either. She had seen fellow officers cross lines, had tried to report it, had been warned, not your place. This system wasn't built for someone like Kim, but she stayed. Not because she believed the system would fix itself, but because she believed if no one stood in the middle, everything would keep sliding further. Wade stood behind watching Kim talk to Clara. He couldn't hear clearly, only saw the stillness, and saw control slipping from his hands. For the first time on that shift, he didn't know what the next step should be. And Kim, she turned back toward him. Her voice low meant only for him. Everything's being recorded. Best to end this here with a clean report. No one hurt, no wrongful arrest. Wade said nothing, just looked. Kim placed a hand on his arm lightly like a pause. You still have a choice, Wade. A choice to do what's right. Then she stepped back. Not everyone in uniform is the same. Not everyone in a tense moment chooses to escalate. Some people like Kim Tran know they are just one drop in a vast current, but they still choose to flow in the right direction. Because sometimes it only takes one person to blink. One person who knows when to stop. That's enough to keep a tragedy from becoming permanent. Wade Miller stood just steps from the BMW. The sun had fully set. Streetlights flickered on, casting soft yellow light across his tense face. The scene before him made his heart race not from danger, but from losing control. With each passing second, the crowd thickened. Every tap on a phone screen turned him into the focal point of a story he never meant to star in. And at the center of every stare sat a woman still calm behind the wheel. Clara Rowe, no shouting, no crying, just steady, composed, still in the car. You're refusing to comply, is that it? Wade asked again for the third time. His voice was harsher now. No longer professional, just tension mixed with bruised ego. Clara replied slowly. I'm not refusing to comply. I'm refusing to follow an order with no legal basis. I've presented my documents. I have the right to remain in the vehicle. A moment of silence taut as stretched metal. Wade clenched his jaw. His whole career had been a string of commands and obedience. But this time, a woman not only refused to follow, she spoke to him in the language of the law. He stepped forward, half a pace, leaned down to the window. I'm going to have to ask you to step out right now. Clara looked him straight in the eye. If you touch me, I will consider it unlawful contact. And every person here recording will testify. Wade glanced to his right. A line of phones raised, flashlights on, lenses capturing every breath. And then, in a moment of thoughtless impulse, his hand reached into the car. His fingers wrapped around Clara's left wrist. Not forceful, not yanking, but enough to touch and enough to cross the line. A shout rang out instantly. Don't touch her. He just grabbed her arm. It's on camera. It's on camera. A girl standing at the front of the crowd yelled. She said, don't touch her. She's a judge. Clara didn't pull away. She didn't struggle. She simply stared at Wade without a word. Her eyes weren't angry. They were empty, as if she had seen this coming. Kim Tran rushed forward. She moved quickly to the car window, her voice firm. Wade let go now. Wade let go like he'd touched fire. He stepped back, jolted by the shout and by his own action. Kim placed herself between him and Clara, one hand raised, creating a boundary. She turned, whispering, you just crossed the line. Wade opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His face flushed deep red, not from anger, but from the realization that everything had been recorded. Every second, every motion, undeniable, irrefutable. Clara raised her hand, adjusted her sleeve as if nothing had happened. Her voice was soft but clear. "I will not leave this vehicle unless there is a legitimate legal reason, and I request documentation of what just occurred." Kim nodded. "I'll make sure that happens, ma'am." The crowd was no longer whispering. They were speaking up, voices rising. "She knows the law and she's right. No one should be pulled from a car like that. I got the whole thing. I'm posting it right now." Wade said nothing. He stepped farther back, standing still, eyes on the ground. An emptiness spread from his stomach to his throat. He knew this had gone too far. And this time the camera didn't fail. The mic wasn't off. The witnesses weren't backing away. The boundaries of police conduct aren't always outlined clearly in a manual. But the public knows, the camera knows, and the victim remembers every second. One touch, not painful, but heavy with the weight of trust and justice. Clara Rowe remained seated, not because she was weak, but because she knew the truth sometimes only needs to be seen. And this time it had been seen. Clearly, undeniably, irreversibly. That moment was when the story shifted. From a traffic stop to an incident that the whole city and the whole country would have to witness. Clara took a deep breath, not to calm herself, but to steady her voice. She knew this was the pivot point of the entire story. In front of her, Officer Wade Miller had just been pulled back by his fellow officer. Beside her, Officer Kim Tran still stood calmly, a line between impulse and reason. Around them, dozens of people held phones, hand-steady lenses, still recording. Clara touched her left wrist where Miller had grabbed her. No bruise, no scrape, but carrying a familiar mark she'd never forget. She spoke, her voice rising like she was seated at the highest bench in the courtroom. "Under Section 4 of the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution, I have the right to not be searched or seized without probable cause. That contact was made without a warrant, without evidence, and without suspicious behavior on my part." The crowd fell silent. Not a sound, just the hum of distant engines and a breeze brushing through her hair. Clara continued, "Touching me without any threatening behavior after I've presented all legal documents is a violation of my civil rights. That was an unjustified use of force, and all of it is being recorded." She raised her head, looking to the crowd. No yelling, no commands, just this. "I ask you to keep those videos. Share them with attorneys if you can. All data is admissible legal evidence." A young black student with glasses raised his hand high. "We've got your back, Judge. We're saving everything. Don't worry." Another voice shouted, "Upload it now, people, right now." And within seconds, the story left Wilkins Street. It began to live online, on Twitter, on TikTok, on every platform where justice sometimes has to run when the law doesn't move fast enough. Kim looked at Clara, nodding gently as if to say, "I understand." As for Wade, he stepped back again. He no longer spoke. He had nothing left to stand on. Clara turned in her seat, opened her purse, and took out her phone. "I'm calling my lawyer, not to file charges, but to ensure the incident is processed properly." She dialed, waited for the tone, and when the line connected, her voice didn't change. "Lisa, it's me, Clara. I'm being unlawfully detained. About 20 witnesses present. I want you on site to begin collecting statements as soon as possible." A brief pause, then, "Yes, I'm okay, but this is no longer personal, it's systemic." That was the difference. Clara didn't yell, she didn't flail, she simply used the tools she had, the law. With every word, every statute she cited, she redrew the lines police are not allowed to cross. She turned knowledge into a soft weapon, no blade, no blow, but sharp enough to cut through misconduct. This is something most people don't have. Not because they're ignorant, but because they've never been taught that they have rights. The right to ask, the right to remain silent, the right to record, the right to refuse to exit the vehicle without legal cause. And Clara knew that. She knew it so well. It made her the one kind of threat those abusing power can't silence. A woman in the crowd whispered, "She really is a judge. The way she talks, it's like being in court." An older white man in a construction helmet patted the shoulder of the person beside him. "This is the first time I've seen someone handle it without losing their cool. She's teaching this city a lesson." Wade Miller watched it all. He couldn't argue. He couldn't walk it back. And he couldn't undo what he had done. In that moment, Clara Rowe wasn't just a citizen resisting. She was an officer of justice without a courtroom, without a gavel, without a judge's bench. All she needed was to know her rights. And you know what? Sometimes knowing you have rights is the only thing keeping you free. Not guns, not backup, knowledge. Clara didn't fight with fists, she fought with understanding. And this time that understanding changed the game. The first video was posted to TikTok just 17 minutes after Clara left the scene. A clip under a minute long, but enough to jolt the entire city of Charlotte. In the video, viewers clearly saw a black woman behind the wheel, a police officer approaching and grabbing her wrist, and a firm voice from inside the car. "I'm a judge. I know my rights. You're breaking the law." In under an hour, the video surpassed 500,000 views, along with thousands of comments, split like a blade. One side was furious, the other skeptical. So proud to see a black woman hold her ground like that. If she weren't a judge, would it have gone this far? Touching her was too far. Cops can't do that. She was acting arrogant. The cop was just doing his job. Clara Rowe's name quickly hit the top trending list on Twitter across the South. Local news outlets began running headlines. Judge pulled over, viral backlash after traffic stop. Charlotte officer recorded using force against judicial official. Internal investigation opens excessive force allegation. Soon after, CBS News and CNN picked it up. On the breakdown, a legal analyst explained, stopping Mrs. Rowe wasn't illegal, but touching a civilian, especially one not resisting, is a violation of protocol. The host asked, but if she hadn't been a judge, would the public even care this much? The analyst replied, that's exactly the problem. She had the legal training to defend herself. Thousands of others don't. Meanwhile, at the police station, a heavy silence took hold. Wade Miller was suspended that same afternoon pending internal investigation. No one said a word. No one patted him on the back. Only strange glances, half pity, half distance. An email circulated from the chief's office to the full department. All citizen contact must be handled with the utmost professionalism. We are working with the judicial office to ensure full transparency. Wade read the email without blinking. He knew this had gone beyond his control. As for Clara, she received dozens of interview requests within 24 hours. From MSNBC, NPR, even a prominent podcast on civil rights. She declined most, released only a single statement. I didn't act for publicity, I acted out of responsibility. Because if someone who understands the law like I do can still be threatened, what happens to those without a voice? But not everyone supported her. A right-wing talk show claimed she acted like she was above the law. Police have a right to be suspicious. Judge or not, people must comply. At the same time, a conservative blog post went viral. Why do black people always assume it's about race? Maybe, just maybe, she wanted to be treated like a victim. Clara read the words. She didn't reply, didn't argue. She simply wrote one line in her notebook, knowing your rights isn't enough. You have to be willing to pay the price to keep them. The story of Clara Rowe didn't just divide a community, it stirred something deeper inside every person watching. Some felt anger, some felt doubt, some stayed silent, and some for the first time asked themselves, if I were in that car, would I have the courage to speak like she did? This was no longer one woman's story, it had become a mirror, reflecting society, reflecting bias, reflecting each of us. Because when the truth goes live, it doesn't just expose wrongdoing, it reveals what we choose to believe. And this time, no camera was turned off. No record was lost. No witness recanted. Everyone saw it. Everyone heard it. And no one could say, we didn't know. Not anymore. Not this time. The entire city buzzed with the name Clara Rowe. News outlets lit up the screens. Her face appeared in headlines, big and small. Hundreds of articles. Thousands of comments, some in support, some in protest, and plenty stuck in uncertainty. But amid the storm of public opinion, in a quiet moment alone by her living room window, Clara thought only of one thing, something that happened 29 years ago on a summer afternoon in Jackson, Mississippi. She had just turned 16. It was the first time her mother let her borrow the car, a worn-out silver Chevy Impala. The driver's seat was loose, the AC made a whining sound. But to Clara, it was her first taste of freedom. In the passenger seat was Lauren, her white best friend since kindergarten. They had just bought ice cream and were laughing, listening to Whitney Houston. And then, red and blue lights flashed in the rearview mirror. A soft siren, a patrol car signaled them to pull over. Clara had never broken the law. Her hand trembled slightly as she shifted into park. Stay calm. It's probably a mistake, Lauren said, smiling, trying to reassure her. But Clara didn't smile. She felt something heavy, not in her chest, in the air. Two officers stepped out. One stood by the driver's side, the other by the passenger side, looking at Lauren first. Registration and license. Their voices weren't loud, but not friendly either. Clara handed them everything. The papers were in her mother's name. The car loan was legal. But the next question made her chest tighten. Do you know this girl? An officer asked, pointing to Lauren. Lauren frowned. She's my friend. We're in the same class. The other officer asked, are you being forced to be here? Is someone threatening you? Lauren flushed red. What? No, we just got ice cream. Clara stayed silent. She didn't say anything because she knew no words would change their minds. A while later, they handed back the documents. No apology, just this. Next time, be more careful. Don't draw attention. As the car rolled back onto the road, Clara felt tears fall before she could wipe them away. Lauren sat quietly for a while, then turned. Clara, what just happened? Why would they ask that? Clara didn't answer right away. She gripped the wheel tightly, eyes on the road. Then quietly she said, to them I wasn't supposed to be behind the wheel, and definitely not sitting next to someone white like you. People like us were meant to be seen, but not be there. Lauren was silent. For the first time in her life, she felt that silence carried more weight than any scream. Wow. That night, Clara told her father everything. Harold was speechless. The man who spoke of Martin Luther King with lit-up eyes looked down for the first time as if the burden of history had collapsed onto his daughter. He placed a hand on her shoulder. They'll keep doing this, Clara. They'll keep doubting, questioning, pushing back. And you'll have to choose, either lower your head or stand up and learn how to speak clearly. Clara nodded. The very next day, she walked into the library and looked for her first book on civil rights law, not to seek revenge, but to understand. To understand how something as small as a traffic stop could make a child lose faith in justice. To understand why so many go their entire lives never speaking up because they know one wrong move could cost them everything. Now sitting at her desk with the desk lamp casting a warm glow over a stack of case files, Clara remembered it all. As clearly as if it were yesterday. Not because the past haunted her, but because the past made her. She never forgot what it felt like to be treated with suspicion just for driving a white friend. Never forgot the looks in that officer's eye as if she was the problem. And from that memory, she traveled a road few like her ever had. She became someone who could issue sentences, someone who could say justice doesn't belong to anyone, it belongs to everyone, and someone who could once again keep her hand from trembling. When someone tried to touch her as if she had no right to say no. Clara Rowe's past never left her, but it wasn't a shadow, it was a light. And it was that light that helped her see justice does not arrive on its own. It must be claimed. It has to be chosen. It has to be held. And sometimes it has to be reclaimed with your whole life. Charlotte City Hall was glowing that morning, not because of the weather, but because every eye in the city was fixed on a single modest room, the setting of the most anticipated hearing in months. Clara Rowe, state judge, and Wade Miller, frontline police officer. Two people, two systems, two visions of power. So the chamber was packed. Press seats were full. Local residents had lined up since 6 a.m. just to be present. Clara entered bars first. She dressed simply, a white blouse, light gray blazer, no robe, no symbols of authority, just herself, a citizen there to make something clear. Wade Miller arrived later, his face serious, tie knotted high, no lawyer beside him per the police union's advice. He chose to speak for himself. This wasn't a courtroom, no judge, no sentence, but something more important was at stake. The public, and justice, which is often rewritten in moments just like this. The chair invited Wade to speak first. He stood, placed a hand on the wooden table. His eyes didn't meet Clara's, only looked forward. I acknowledge that the situation that day could have been handled better. I felt pressure. When you face daily threats, you learn to react fast. Maybe I was overly sensitive, but I never meant to harm anyone. He paused, then added, I ask that this be considered in context, and I hope people understand. I'm only human. Murmurs filled the room. Someone sighed. A reporter jotted down no direct apology. Clara remained seated, hands clasped, expression unchanged. Then she was called to speak. Clara rose, walked slowly, and spoke with a voice that didn't need a microphone to carry. I won't speak long, because what I have to say is already clear. She looked directly at Wade for the first time since the incident. I'm not asking you to apologize. I don't want you to lose your job. I just want the truth to be recorded clearly and completely. She paused. Her eyes swept across the room. I was stopped without cause. I presented all documents. I identified myself, my name, my profession, and my legal rights. And I was still touched, despite doing everything right. Clara exhaled lightly. Her voice softened but stayed steel strong. I wasn't spared because I'm a judge. I'm free because I knew my rights. And I didn't stay silent. A silence dropped like a gavel. No one struck the bench, but everyone felt as if a verdict had just been read. Clara continued, now speaking to everyone, not just Wade. I'm not here today to defend myself. I'm here to defend a principle. The principle that no one is above the law, no matter the uniform, no matter the position. The principle that a justice system is only worthy of trust if it has the courage to examine itself. She gave a slight nod, then closed. I believe in the law, but I also believe the law must be reminded, must be questioned, must be challenged, not with violence, but with the courage to say no when it matters most. When Clara sat down, no one clapped. No one needed to, because everyone had just heard exactly what they needed to hear. A black woman, stopped, doubted, touched without cause, but also someone who used the right words, the right authority, the right law to stand her ground between two systems and not be swallowed by either. Clara left the hearing room with her head high, not because she had won, but because she had lived with integrity. Wade followed behind, head lowered. No one spoke to him. No one touched him. And perhaps for the first time in his life, he understood. Some touches don't leave bruises, but leave scars across an entire system. This wasn't just a hearing. It was a collision between two interpretations of justice, one rooted in power, the other in truth. And on that day, truth prevailed, not with force, but with one person who dared not to be silent. Monday morning, Clara Rowe walked through the doors of the Mecklenburg County Superior Court as she did every day. Briefcase in hand, black robe draped neatly over her shoulders, her shoes tapped steadily along the marble hallway. But today, every look that followed her was different. She was no longer just Judge Rowe. She was the woman in the video, the one who held her voice, the one who didn't let authority overstep, the one who made an entire nation ask itself, when you see a black woman behind the wheel of a nice car, what do you feel? Pride, suspicion, or fear? Clara knew she could never return to the way things were. No longer the quiet judge who ruled and went home unnoticed. Now every step she took carried a message. She was a reminder that silence, whether from the law or from the people, can become an accomplice to injustice. A little girl stood waiting for her mother in the hallway. As Clara passed by, the girl whispered, "Mom, is that the judge I saw on YouTube?" The mother nodded. Clara turned slightly and smiled. She didn't need to say anything, just one look, and that girl would remember. There was once someone who was doubted, but did not back down. You see, this isn't just a story about racism, not just a viral video, not just a professional violation. This is a question for all of us. What will you do when you see power being abused? Will you lower your head and walk past, or pull out your phone and record? Will you stay silent, thinking this isn't my problem? Or will you speak up, knowing that if you do nothing today, one day, it might be you who gets silenced? Clara never saw herself as a hero. She was simply a woman who understood justice is not some lofty idea on paper. It's something that must be protected even when no one tells you to. Are you still listening? Because one day you might be walking down the street and you'll see someone being stopped without reason, see fear in their eyes, see a hand gripping someone's wrist without permission. What will you do? Will you look away or start recording? Will you whisper that's terrible and move on? Or will you stand there to witness, to confirm, to become part of the truth? Don't think you're not involved, because justice is only strong when someone holds it with both hands. One hand is the law, the other is us. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, to be heard, to be shared, follow this channel, because we will keep telling them the things no one wants to say, but everyone needs to hear. Because power doesn't harm on its own. It only does when no one dares to watch.